under the floorboards. The first thing Ava noticed when she moved into the old house was the smell. It wasn't the dusty, stale scent of a place left empty too long, but something else, like damp wood and rusting metal, lingering beneath the lavender air freshener the realtor had sprayed before the tour. She ignored it at first. She needed this place, cheap and tucked away from the city where she could focus on her final thesis without her parents or friends checking in. She unpacked her boxes, arranged her second-hand furniture, and settled in with the determination of a woman trying to reinvent her life. But that first night, the sound started. It was soft at first, a gentle tapping beneath the floorboards in her bedroom as she read under the glow of her lamp. She paused, listening, then shook her head and returned to her notes, telling herself it was the house settling. But the tapping grew louder, like the drumming of fingernails, insistent, patient. Sometimes it would stop for hours, only to return when she was about to drift off, a quiet, polite reminder that something was awake under her feet. The next morning, she inspected the room, lifting the edges of the carpet. There were small gaps in the warped floorboards, but no signs of pests or cracks big enough for raccoons or rats. She tried to laugh it off, but that night the tapping started again, closer, directly under her bed, followed by the faintest scraping sound. She tried to stomp on the floor, hoping to frighten away whatever was under there, but the tapping only stopped for a moment before resuming, more insistent, more deliberate. On the third day, she noticed something worse. When she went to open her closet, she found deep scratches on the inside of the door, as if something with long, thin fingers had clawed at it from within. She recoiled, slamming it shut, telling herself it must have been there before she moved in, that it didn't mean anything. But that night, the tapping turned to knocking. A slow, patient knock from under the floorboards, in groups of 3, again and again until dawn. She tried playing music, blasting it through her headphones, but she could still feel the vibrations of the knocking in her bones, each knock perfectly timed, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to her. She called the landlord the next morning, explaining there was something under the house, that it might be an animal, that she needed it checked. He promised to send someone, but no one came. That night, as she lay in bed, hugging her pillow to her chest, she heard a new sound, whispering. It was muffled, but there, rising between the knocks, seeping through the cracks in the floorboards, a voice she could not understand, speaking words in a language she did not know, words that made her skin crawl and her teeth ache. She covered her ears, burying her face in her pillow, but the whispers found their way in, sliding into her mind like cold, wet fingers. Let me out. She did not remember falling asleep, but she woke to find herself lying on the floor, her ear pressed against the boards, listening. The knocking had stopped, but there was a faint breathing, deep and rattling, just below her, so close she could feel the boards vibrate with each exhale. She pulled herself away, her heart pounding, and stumbled into the bathroom to splash water on her face. When she looked up, she saw something behind her in the mirror, just for a moment, a shape, pale and long, crouched in the corner of her room, watching her with dark, sunken eyes. She spun around, but the room was empty. She didn't sleep that night, sitting in the kitchen with the lights on, clutching a mug of cold coffee as she watched the dark hallway, waiting for the dawn. When the sun rose, she decided she needed to leave, to pack her things and get out, but as she stepped into her bedroom, she found the floorboards had shifted. A few had been pushed up, leaving a dark, narrow gap. The smell was worse now, like wet soil and rot, and she felt her stomach twist. But something made her look, made her drop to her knees and peer into the gap, holding her breath. What she saw made her scream. There was a face beneath the floor, pale and stretched, with hollow eyes and a mouth that opened and closed slowly, as if trying to speak, blackened fingers scraping against the wood, trying to push itself up. She stumbled back, but the thing beneath the floor reached through the gap, its fingers long and impossibly thin, grabbing her ankle with a grip like iron. She fell, clawing at the floor as it pulled her closer, dragging her toward the gap. She kicked, screaming, and managed to free herself, crawling backward into the hallway. The hand withdrew, but the whispers returned, louder now, echoing in her mind. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out. She ran from the house, barefoot, leaving the door open behind her as she stumbled down the street to the neighbor's home, pounding on their door until they let her in. The police came, searched the house, and found nothing under the floorboards. No tunnels, no hidden crawlspace, no sign of forced entry. They told her it was stress, that she was imagining things, that old houses made strange sounds. But when she returned to grab her things, the smell was still there, and the boards in her room were still shifted, leaving that dark gap. She moved back in with her parents that night, leaving the house empty, telling herself she would deal with it later, that it wasn't her problem anymore. But the whispers followed her. At night, in her old room at her parents' house, she would wake to the sound of tapping on the floor, just under her bed, followed by the slow, deliberate knocking. 3 knocks. Again and again. She tried to cover it with music, with white noise, with sleeping pills, but nothing drowned out the whispers. Let me out. Let me out. She tried to ignore it, but then the knocking came during the day, as she worked on her thesis, soft but persistent, under her desk, under the kitchen table, under the floor wherever she went. One night, desperate and exhausted, she found herself on the floor again, ear pressed to the boards, listening. She heard the breathing, deep and rattling, and the voice, clearer now. You let me in. Now let me out. She tried to pull away, but her hands were stuck to the floor, her fingers sinking into the wood as if it were clay. She felt something cold wrap around her wrists from beneath, pulling her down, and she screamed as the floor opened beneath her. For a moment, she saw the thing's face again, inches from hers, its black eyes reflecting her terrified expression as its mouth stretched into a horrible grin. And then she was gone. When her parents found her room empty, they called the police, who searched the house, but there was no sign of Ava. The only thing they found was a faint smell of rot and damp soil, and on the floor of her room, a small, dark stain near the bed that would not wash away. At night, when the house is quiet, Ava's parents hear it too, the knocking, soft and patient, coming from under the floorboards. 3 knocks. Again and again. Sometimes they hear her voice, calling out from beneath the floor, whispering to them in the dark. Let me out. Please, let me out. But no matter what they do, they cannot find her. And the knocking never stops.